Hey everyone, Victor here from Mapster, here with another video that's kind of coming from the blog. Today is the first of what we'll do a series of, which is map reviews. We're going to look at interactive maps online, break them down. What's their strengths, weaknesses, what are they trying to do, are they succeeding at it, what's their possible backends, and what are some little features we can learn from or look at together to learn more about interactive maps. My cat's just here hanging out, as always. So today we're going to start with Native Land, which is actually my own map. So you can find it at native-land.ca. It's one of my first mapping projects, which grew viral and eventually grew into a whole nonprofit. It's a whole story. You can read about that more other places online. Today we're just going to focus on the map. When it comes to looking at an online map, the first thing we want to look at is its purpose. Like, who's it aimed at? What's it trying to do? What's the probable goal of this map? So when it comes to Native Land, the goal of this map is to reach out to the broad public, particularly in North America, Australia, New Zealand, and South America, and to to kind of get people into a different way of thinking about Indigenous history and Indigenous people. So Native Land looks to put Indigenous people on the map in a way that isn't really a traditional Western way, and to show the complexity, diversity. So when it comes to that purpose, it helps us understand a bit the appearance of the map. So the appearance of the map is one of a lot of color, a lot of overlapping, a lot of complexity, and actually quite a bit of confusion when someone first lands on it. It takes a little bit of looking around and understanding to come to realize what the map is actually trying to do. And that's on purpose. That is to present the user in a kind of a way with a bit of a shock of the complexity and, again, the diversity of all these different groups spread out all over the landscape, that people are familiar with seeing this map, but not with these shapes on it, not with these borders, and not with so many borders and so many names. People will be familiar with many of the names, but not all of them. And this kind of intensity is meant to have an effect that relates to the purpose of the map. Some of the interactivity, to just hit the main points. People can search for a location, whether that's their own town or someplace they visited. People can mouse around and features will highlight. They can click, and the click will go through all the layers that they currently have active and show them everything that is present in that clicked spot. Then they can go to a page that has more information. People can search for nations themselves through drop downs, and there's a few buttons that allow magnification changes for accessibility, as well as colors on and off, and labels. So like labels like putting town names on and off. By default we have them off, partly because they'd stuff up the map, and also to encourage, again, that purpose of seeing the map through an Indigenous lens, an Indigenous way, and kind of changing the narrative a little bit. So yeah, so those are some of the core functionalities, the core interactivity that we have. And on mobile, we have a slightly simpler version where we get rid of some of the labels and some colors. I think we actually have the color and labels options in mobile. We get rid of some of the drop downs and kind of simplify it out a little bit to make it easier to navigate. In terms of the back end, so since I actually know the back end, I can talk about it without guessing. We use WordPress as a backend, and all of the information is at core stored in WordPress. And then through some use of Mapbox tiling service, we have a good relationship with Mapbox. It flows through Mapbox and to a front-end Mapbox GLJS map. And from there, we have a bunch of interactivity, and it also interacts with our own API, which is built, which functions using some GeoJSONs that are built from that WordPress data set. So yeah, we use tile sets and styles in Mapbox, and the rest is mainly managed through WordPress. The main goal was to make it so our researchers could really work without having to become like map technicians online. They could just get into WordPress, do a little editing, and press some buttons, and things would end up on the map properly. So that's the goal, and we have mainly accomplished that. So that's exciting. Getting into some of the strengths of this particular map. Normally I work with this map, so I don't see the strengths so much as I generally see the weaknesses. Maybe that's just me, maybe that's a dev thing. But just for the sake of it, it does get that argument across, that Indigenous lens, that complexity, that diversity, gets that across fairly well. It's easy to search and click. People will naturally start mousing over and they see things jumping up or changing, and that's good, and people click and they get the idea, or they can easily see the instructions to search their own town or wherever. There is a lot of data on it, and it's also at a good level of accuracy. It's not meant to be like a to-the-meter accuracy, but it's also not meant to just be like general blobs of Indigenous groups around here. It's supposed to be accurate to its particular goals. You can read more about that at the Native Land site, of course, but essentially Indigenous self-representation is the goal. The backend, as I said, is very research friendly, and that was very important to us. And we have also quite a few options available. I think that's another strength with the labels and colors and all that stuff. Some of the weaknesses. So the weaknesses and the strengths are often interrelated. So while the strength is that the map gets its point across with that diversity and Indigenous lens, it's also weak in that it's like confusing. When people land on it, they have to take some time, and it takes a little bit of investment to get what they're looking at. And some people are just too confused and too disoriented, and they don't see different features, they get confused, they leave the site. That's a weakness that's fairly challenging to tackle without changing like the fundamental way that the whole map is done, but it's part of the mix of what we're looking at when we're creating a map. The mouse over effects aren't the best. They don't really help you see that well where you're looking at. The blobs, the polygons on the map light up, but it's still hard to see the boundaries. This might be helped by something like some borders around them, but even then we're just dealing with so many shapes at once that it just becomes hard to know which colors are really associated with which shapes. We've tried different things for this, having little patches of colors beside them. It's still confusing because some of the colors are similar in certain places. And sometimes there's just like 12 nations or something in one place, and that is really difficult to know what to do with that. So that's a weakness that, again, is fairly hard to tackle, but there's some small things we could probably do to improve it. And finally, there's a lot going on in the interface itself. Though it's fairly simple, people often miss certain options, and they email us about it, and we have to tell them. And that points to a design weakness if people have to be told what they should be able to see. So as an overall summary, I would say that this map is something like a 6, 7, 8, it's probably 7 out of 10 in terms of what it's trying to do. There's definitely improvements to make, but overall, I think this map definitely achieves its purpose. It's proved itself to be a worthwhile resource to many people, and many people have found it to be useful and continue to use it, and that does speak to its success. So maybe I'm being a little unfair with the 7. Let's maybe leave it at an 8. So yeah, I think that's it for the map review for Native Land, and we'll be tackling other completely different types of maps. We'll go from real estate maps to data visualization to just store locators and see what we can get out of them in the future. So join us for those, and thanks for watching.